Notes are a constantly evolving thing. I've said in phase 3, you should spend a significant amount of time making your notes. Note down your mistakes. Keep a log of your mistakes. Notes making. Notes making is one of the best ways in order to retain information. But for that, you must first organize information. Right? Organize information का क्या मतलब है? कि if I'm organizing things as per the topic of the syllabus, so then what I can do is what I've read in current affairs, I can also include it over there. If I have some new information that I read in some random book or in some random article, I can also include it over there. Do not make notes as per book or as per month, because a lot of people, what they do is they make current affairs notes as per month. कि February में February 1st को ये था, February 2, February 3, 4, 5, you have a notebook, 1 February, 1 page, 2 February, 2 page. That is a very, very bad way to organize it. Why? I'll tell you for a very simple example for this. For example, February 5th ko, you had a news item for the Israel-Hamas war. Then February 27th ko, you again had a news item for this. Now, when I want to revise this topic, I will have to revise the entire book to be able to revise Israel-Hamas. Maybe I did not want to waste that amount of time just revising one topic, right? But instead, if I organize it as per the syllabus, माने कि Israel-Hamas किधर आएगा? Who can tell me which mains paper, GS 1, 2, 3, 4, will Israel-Hamas conflict come under? Awesome. International relations in GS2, right? So now I know if I ever have to go back and revise Israel-Hamas, I have to go to my GS2 ka notebook. GS2 ka notebook mein international relations wala part, and there on a single page, I'll find all the information I need. Do not make notes as per month. That is the worst thing that you will do, because you will spend time making them and they will be useless. Right? At this point, there is also the conversation that should notes be digital or handwritten? It's a personal preference. However, I would make a slight distinction. When you're making static notes, static kya hai? Static is polity ka notes. Static is economy ka basic notes. These can be handwritten. But if you're making current affairs ka notes, prefer making digital. Why? Because current affairs ka notes are constantly updated. You need to really keep updating those things, because let's say you had made a note for constitutional amendments. Now Modi ji has amended the constitution again. So now what are you going to do? Add one more page, sticky note, XYZ. But if you have a digital note, I can keep adding to my own note, right? So it becomes slightly easier if you make digital notes for current affairs. It is by no means ki bhaiya, you can not make handwritten notes for current affairs. You can make them. It will just get slightly more messy. You might have to add some pages here and there, or you can just like leave extra pages in the middle. That is something for you to figure out. Both of those ideas work. I hope that makes sense. Keep it static. Why am I saying handwritten? And current affairs, why am I saying prefer digital? You can just make them either way. I hope that makes sense. Yes or no? Coming to the other question of what to note. What to note is very, very important here. Why? Because when we're beginning preparation, and this is the reason why, what to note is the reason why I said do not make notes in phase 2. Phase 2 का जो negative list है, detailed notes for GS यहाँ पे लिखा है. Do not make detailed notes in phase 2. Phase 3 is when you start making notes. यहाँ पे notes है. Very simple reason. कि for mains, you will need analytical notes. What does analytical notes mean? Analytical notes mean कि your notes, for example, if I'm making notes for the Parliament of India, so it will have the basic details that, Article 78 of the Constitution establishes the Parliament, that, what are the various provisions of the Parliament. Half a page I've done. But beyond that, my notes should contain what are the functions of the Parliament, what are the problems in the functioning of the Parliament, what are the proposed solutions for these problems. Now, these are not things that you will find maybe in just Lakshmikant. Maybe for this, you will have to read the Bear Act. Maybe for this, you will have to read some newspaper article, editorials वगैरह जो आते हैं. So those are very useful in making these sorts of notes. Current affairs, on the other hand, will be very factual notes. Current affairs में ऐसा कोई major analysis नहीं है. If there is a new missile test that is done by India, it is a fact. There's nothing analysis over there. I will just note down that, Agni 5 test fired XYZ, Agni 5 ka 4-5 points, I will write down. And finally, there are the third thing that I wanted to make a note of, that whenever you're giving tests, be it pre or mains, note down your mistakes. Keep a log of your mistakes. Why? Because like we said in the very beginning of this discussion, we talked about having a growth mindset. What does that do? It allows me to grow from my mistakes. But if I don't remember my mistakes, because it's a 2-year journey, I will forget the mistakes that I've made. So I have also got to keep a log of, okay, this is the area that I'm again and again repeatedly making a mistake in. Because if I can do that, if I can keep remembering that, I've made this mistake once already, I don't want to repeat this mistake. Because if after giving, let's say 2 section tests of quality, you've made some mistakes. If I have a note of these mistakes, if before giving the third test, I read all of those notes and then give the third test, do you think you'll make some of the same mistakes? Yes or no? Some you might, but you will not repeat most of those mistakes. So that's the idea. Keep a log of your mistakes. Finally, and this is the most important part for notes making, notes are a constantly evolving thing. It does not mean that once you've made your notes, it is the end of the story, which is why generally do not just be dependent on the notes made by somebody else. Making notes yourself is very important because you gain more from the process of note making than from the notes themselves. In the process of making notes, now this is another question that I'll ask you. How many times has it happened that, when you're noting down something, when you're writing something, that before writing it down, you felt that, I know this concept very well, I understand everything about it. And when you start writing it down, suddenly you realize, oh, I don't know this. Or maybe I'm not very sure about, everything there is. Have you felt this? Yes or no? Right. So that problem is exactly what we want to solve by the process of note making. We want to try and uncover the gaps in our knowledge, because there are a lot of gaps in our knowledge which we lie to ourselves about the fact that, no, I understand this completely. But when I have to explain it, then it suddenly appears, oh shit, I didn't know that. So it is the process of note making that is important. And for that reason, I've said in phase 3, you should spend a significant amount of time making your notes. And once you have made your notes, you will keep updating them, keep reviewing them, keep reducing them, right? Because sometimes in the end, you'll see some of the great toppers from the last couple of years, great in the sense of that they've shared a lot of their sources and information. You'll find, for example, personally, I really liked Shreyans Kumatka World History Notes. In about 25 pages, he has summed up whatever is required for world history. 25 pages. Brilliant. But he has cut it down to such an extent that if you have not read world history, you will not understand his notes. Right? So that is the long-term goal of this, that you want to make your notes so simplified, so concise, so condensed that they make absolutely perfect sense to you, and you really don't care if they make sense to anybody else. Because notes are for you to review before the exam. Right? So this is going to be a constant process to reduce the notes that you have made, to simplify them. Because again, like for example, जो secularism वाला question हमने शुरू में बात की थी, that question right now, if you've just begun the journey for UPSC preparation, you may not understand that, what is secularism. But I can assure you, if you spend 3 to 6 months, 9 months, 1 year preparing for civil services, you will not forget what is secularism. Right? So this is something that happens along the way. Right now, you may be very confused about what is repo rate, what is the purpose of repo rate. You do 1 year of preparation, serious preparation, you will not forget that. So maybe you don't need to make the note of repo rate, but maybe you need to make the note of what is dependent on the repo rate. You're getting this idea? Did that make sense to you? So please do ensure that you make notes and you are not just buying notes from somebody else, because sometimes it will just happen. Like the person that I had mentioned was Shreyans Kumat. His notes are also available on our website, on his blog also. They're very popular. World history. You can check them out. If you've not read world history, you will not make a lot of sense of his notes. But if you've read world history, these notes are the most brilliant thing you will ever find. Because in 25 pages, he summed up everything. But that can only be done if you've done the basic work beforehand.